Hi, those that are joining us live and those that are joining us um, directly from the invitation. So we're now starting. It's 12:15. So hi, Dave.
Hi, Pip. How are you?
I'm very well. For everyone watching Pip Stocks, I'm the founder of Brand Hook, which is a startup advisory. It's evolved based on my own journey of being a startup founder and my own entrepreneurial experience. I'm here with Dave Nanfra. Dave, who are you?
I'm Dave Nanfra, as you said, Pip. Thanks for having me, by the way. I really appreciate it. So I've worked extensively over the last decade in working with founders in both startup, scale up to pre-IPO and post-IPO businesses. A lot of experiences around that, but my philosophy, probably more importantly, is around values alignment and strengths leveraging, which is absolutely critical to any leader or any business founder. And so that's something I carry into all the coaching that I do over the years. But really excited to get this going. So I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about me. I'd love to talk about you and what you're doing and those that are listening and providing some insights that might be helpful for them on their journey.
Yeah, great. So we're David and I have actually had quite parallel careers. He and I drove our matching Corollas when we started university. Mine was brown and Dave's was yellow. And we did
Mustard mine was good.
mustard, sorry. What's lovely is that we're great mates from the old days. We've met at school, but we've also had really great parallel careers and been in London together and so on. So, I suppose one thing that we both agree on is this idea of growth, personal growth, business growth, and we're really passionate about that as well. So, and we both agree that that growth comes from foundations, so building out great foundations. I've been talking a lot about the 48-hour accelerator. So those that want to actually benefit from a deal that I've got for those that are attending or watching, there's a link I've just put in the chat. You can click the link, and for today only, I've got a deal where you can buy one ticket and bring your co-founder for free or a member of your team for free. So I'll pop that up as well later on. And I suppose that's part of this whole idea about creating a great foundation for people. But we're here to talk about what makes a great founder mindset. So I've got a couple of questions for Dave, and if anyone wants to ask a question, they can jump into the chat as well. So Dave, in your mind, what does a strong mindset look like, and why is it critical when you build a business?
Thanks, Pip. I think it's a good way to kick off the conversation. There's a lot of advice out there to founders, but my belief strongly is in three pillars and three key areas that are most impactful. And one of those is the idea of radical responsibility. And so anybody who's come across this will understand that it's not about whether it's your fault or not, or who's to blame for what's going on around you, but whether you take responsibility for that and take action around it. And when we do that, we take full ownership for and control of the next course of action. So it's about no excuses and no blaming external factors, just you taking ownership for anything that happens to you or in your business as well. And I think that can be really empowering. That's one thing. Secondly is this idea of emotional aperture. Now, that's not only about emotional regulation, and that is having the presence of mind in circumstances to choose how you respond and not react under pressure is really important. It's a key component of great leadership. But the other part is reading the emotional dynamics in your business and your team. So the best founders and the best leaders are really good at reading the room and gauging the mood and recognizing unspoken tensions or gaps that exist within their business. And this only comes through awareness. Finally, the third pillar of this, in my belief, is around the alignment with values and purpose. So your business is something deeper than just revenue. And I think we all recognize this and feel that intuitively, but your values are a guide to your decisions and your purpose fuels your resilience as well. So without these, you're just drifting and you're making short-term and short-sighted decisions. And that can lead to burnout as well. So I really want to focus today throughout our discussion, Pip, around the alignment with values and purpose. I think it's an often spoken about thing, but I don't believe it's really approached with some real intention. So why does it matter? Because your mindset and your values determine the culture that exists within your business. And whether you have defined it or not, people see it and they feel it. And so do your customers or your clients. So it determines a culture, determines a momentum, and ultimately the success of your business. And it's often skipped over in terms of action or working within the business. So what we really want to understand here is that the lack of ownership and resilience or alignment with purpose means that you become more reactive and your team won't trust your leadership, but also that your business potentially can suffer if you don't take a hold of it and become aware of it sooner.
You said something about that idea of emotional aperture and not reacting emotionally under stress. I mean, that's pretty hard when you're running a startup, I think. What do you say to people when, I mean, we're going to go on to hints and tips, but I suppose, is that something that you find the biggest issue for founders?
Absolutely. Look, we all know that when we're under pressure, it's very difficult to think differently or to move out of that pressurized state. So, the emotional aperture is not about not feeling emotion, not feeling frustration, not feeling anger at times, not feeling sad, or not feeling like you're good enough. The imposter syndrome. It's not about that we don't feel these things. It's about how we decide to proceed and how we communicate once we feel those things. And so there's a present moment gap that we can take in a conversation or within our day that just has us zoom out a little bit on ourselves and recognize that we might be feeling a level of frustration or a prolonged level of frustration in a certain way, but that we're going to choose to react in a different way, which impacts everybody around us. So it's about feeling your energy and then how you're going to then move energetically going forward. It's really tight.
Yeah, okay, great. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, the next question I had for you was, how does a founder's mindset directly impact the success of a business? And maybe just give some examples of what you've seen.
Yeah, sure. So look, your business is going to be a mirror of your leadership. And I think that sounds really obvious, but it's true. Particularly when you start with a small team or you've got a co-founder or even on your own, people see this, their brands are really transparent, as we know these days. And so the way that you show up represents the business that you have, and the business that you have that you want people to trust in represents who you are. And so really it's about this mirror of leadership and everything that goes on around you. So confidence, clarity, and purpose are really important, and how customers are going to trust you as a result of who you are. And indeed, if you're in the process of investment, whether investors will trust you. And we know that there's a big focus on who the founder is in terms of the trust that exists with investors as well. So, I guess this is an example of one person that I've coached around this, but, it's a commonality. Self-doubt and imposter syndrome is just part of being a founder. Now, I've got a really unique view on it, and it's not something to get rid of. It's not something to conquer. It's just something to get better at. And the reason why is because if you're a high performer and you're constantly driving for results, and you're regularly going to be in a space where you feel a little bit a lack of confidence. There's always going to be a hurdle to get over. There's going to be an obstacle to move around. But this sense of imposter syndrome is just something that will come to you at times when you're in this growth phase. And we don't want to avoid it because we want to just tackle it. We want to tackle that head on, but also recognize that it will come back when we're looking for that next growth opportunity or that next achievement. So the other thing here that I've worked with regularly, and particularly with this one founder, was once we sort of tackled the idea and understood, created awareness around the imposter syndrome and the self-doubt, which was having that founder second guess their decisions and avoiding tough conversations. We then moved into and shifted that into a reframing around radical responsibility and this emotional aperture and this emotional regulation. And that might seem like a small shift, but once we made that shift, which wasn't easy, then that changed how the business showed up. And the shift was that the leaders started leading with conviction. They started making tougher calls in their business, and they showed up more consistently with their team. So the people within the team grew confidence in their leadership. Investors grew more confident in their leadership. They gained some traction and basically were able to start shifting from this struggling scarcity mindset into a more abundant mindset and enabling the business to scale. So in that way, it came all around this mirror of leadership.
That's quite hard though, isn't it? Like being able to change some really ingrained habits, you know,
Mm.
I mean, what period of time do you give people, do you suggest that it takes? Because sometimes you don't have that much time in that
Yeah,
startup world.
yeah, I think that's a really good follow-up question to that. Thanks, Pip. We want fast results and we want them quickly. Things like confidence, acts of confidence come before feelings of confidence. And we've heard it as fake it till you make it, but it's not the same thing. It's around displaying confidence in your actions, leaning into the fear, even though you feel it, and taking action despite of that. And that's courage, that's bravery. And when we do that, we can make more instant changes. But over time, moving to that feeling of confidence based on the actions you take around that confidence, and over time that can change. We also know that behaviour change is so ingrained. Our behaviours, our beliefs and our values are so ingrained into who we are that it does take time to shift that in ourselves. So we need to look after ourselves. We need to show self-care through that process, and we need to recognise it's not about perfection, it's about progress. So yes, it does take time, but it doesn't mean you can't start today in taking actions towards the behaviours that will align with the success of your business or your best self.
Okay, thanks. So other than imposter syndrome, what are the other common challenges that you find or roadblocks that founders experience?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, how do they know that it's happening? I mean, yeah, I'd be curious about what you think about that.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So probably the one that I coach most around is avoiding hard conversations.
Yeah, I hate that, by the way. I hate having hard conversations. That's one of my minor nightmares.
Well, I'll share with you that I do as well. And I think everybody does, or feedback conversations, or receiving feedback, or giving feedback, or making a decision that's going to impact negatively on somebody, or create an emotional reaction which is not comfortable for you. This is part of leadership and it's part of being a founder. But I just want to make it clear too that we can have hard conversations and we can do it compassionately and we can do it in a kind way. So you can still have a difficult conversation, yet be empathetic, yet be compassionate to the person you're having the conversation with, and also making tough decisions at the same time. But we don't want to avoid them because, this is where our businesses get impacted. Us delaying a tough conversation with somebody, letting somebody go that's not well aligned with our business, getting the right people within our businesses that are going to work towards our purpose and understand our vision is a very difficult thing to do and to get right. And we're constantly evolving that. But the worst thing is not making those decisions that are going to move your business forward. So that's where the fear comes in. So you don't want fear to dictate your decisions. And also drifting from your core values. There has been times when I've started working with businesses that actually don't even have a set of values because they haven't intentionally thought about what's really important to the business and how to define that culture. And it's almost this idea that I'll think about values when my business starts to get some traction or become a little bit more successful or turn a profit or hit a revenue target. Well, I think this is faulty thinking. And I think it's really important to constantly be thinking about what's important to you in the business, also what's important to the business in terms of the culture that you want to create. And what this means is when we hit those roadblocks and that struggle time, that we have something to anchor ourselves to. And it's really important to have that anchor. So
you talked about some of the things we talked about was the early signs of, when you have these roadblocks. What do you, I mean, apart from panic and fear, what are the other things that show up?
Yeah. Well, things like the work that you're doing that used to motivate you no longer motivates you anymore. I think that's an early sign to start thinking about where you're at or where your business direction is going to. Other early warning signs is that feeling drained and disconnected from the vision of your business or the purpose. And also, the avoidance of making decisions is also an early warning sign around that. And also an element of that would be that your team is disengaged and momentum feels stuck. You've really got to pay attention to what's going on in those moments and get those things early.
I had an experience with one of my businesses about a team starting to become disengaged, actually. Yeah. And it was, so had I had, the experience to kind of recognize that and see that and then be able to jump in and do something about it would have been incredibly helpful, I have to say.
Mm.
So when founders are feeling like that, so in my case, instead of like having I just didn't have the experience. What would you recommend people do in that case?
Yeah. Okay.
If you're starting to recognize
Mm.
something, what should they do?
Mm. Well, many of us, and I included, when a stressful situation arises or where something's really difficult to do, I might be a little bit more insular and go into my shell a little bit more and just work really hard to fix it. But actually, there's some counterintuitive truths around this. And one of them is that rather than isolate yourself in those moments, that you seek out support, ask for help, connect with people around you. Another thing is, once you've determined that you're burned out or that the symptoms of burnout are coming, it's already too late. So rather than ignoring those symptoms of burnout, you want to set some really clear boundaries on how you work, and that what involves self-care and looking after yourself. And then also, the founder world is, laced with rejection, and it happens again and again and again. And the element of rejection is that, we take it personally. And so really, that element of taking it personally can often really get in the way of our future success. So instead of taking it personally, extract lessons and adapt. And I think that's really an important part of a key founder mindset. So really, it does come back to the simplicity of working on yourself as hard as you work on your business. So the self-awareness piece is absolutely critical. And we'll always upskill or work harder or learn something new or learn new marketing or go a new marketing tool or implement some kind of a software. But how often do we sit with ourselves and create awareness around how we show up and how we lead and how we run our businesses? And I think it's really important to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 55, so are you, so that's okay. And I think it's probably only in the last few years that I've really worked out, more about myself and how I should be behaving and what I want from my business and expectations. How do inexperienced founders get there? There are some people who are just incredibly intuitive from a young age, but how do inexperienced founders work that out?
I think basic structures are really important, that you determine what they are. And, as you said, a skill set around emotional intelligence is, across a spectrum of really good to not so good, right? And so it's a skill set like any other, like an IQ would be. EQ is a skill set. You can build EQ. This is a good thing. Just like you can build your IQ to a certain extent, you can also build your EQ by implementing practices that show up as empathy, that show up as emotionally regulating effectively, that can show up as understanding and reading a room. So you can put little basic structures to help you to gain the awareness, which grows that skill. And you can do that whenever you like. And this is a great thing about what we know about neuroscience and brain plasticity, is that we can change it, and we can change it whenever we decide to. And so I find that it's a really hopeful from that perspective. Anyone can do it.
Yeah, it takes desire, doesn't it? I suppose, it's not something that a lot of people are particularly think, as you say, they grow their business, they don't necessarily grow themselves.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about reframing a failure in the last bit, but let's sort of, the examples, like some of the examples we talked about is, how do you reframe when an investor says no, which is, I had 100 no's with 𝗺𝗂𝘂𝗍. How do you reframe that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, something that was really helpful to me was when I heard that no just means next one. And it's really simple, but how great is that? So when no means next one, all we're doing is collecting data. And for those out there who are in business development or sales, they'll recognise it's really important to not take rejection personally, and that you just move on to the next one. Activity is really important there. So I like that. Like when an investor says no, again, that's just feedback, that's data. So how do you refine your pitch? Would be the question that potentially might go into an investor saying no. And that's controllable. Another one would be when your customer's not buying, they're not responding to your product. then that's an insight in terms of your value proposition.
Yeah.
Again, it's just data. And then a key hire leaves. Again, rather than taking that personally, how do we use that? Well, it's a lesson in leadership, and it's also a lesson on how to hire better next time. So that's where the reframing takes place. If we can simplify it and make it practical and not make it personal, it helps us move forward more quickly and unblock. Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, that's so true. All right, a couple of questions around navigating challenges in a bit more detail, and then maybe let's just finish up on some practical advice that people can activate. Sure. So what are the biggest, burnout is such a big part of our startup community. What would be some of the red flags that you see where founders are really on that burnout, on that burnout trajectory?
Yeah. Look, for me, and we've discussed this before, you and I, Pip, and it's connected to purpose. Like founders lose their way where they lose the original purpose as to why they started that business. And potentially it might be because they've got suggestions in the accelerators that they've attended, or potentially they've got mentors who've given them advice. So rather than checking back on what's really important to them and why they established their business in the first place, they might go with that idea because it potentially could be a business-winning idea. And so I think that's a real danger, and it's the biggest burnout red flag. Once you head down that path away from your purpose and misalign with your values, then you need to, again, course correct that and bring that back in. It's not, burnout's not about working long hours. If you've got a key purpose, life isn't about balance, it's about integration. So, if you're working without meaning, that's a really big one for me.
But that's true. I agree with you. And I've, again, many founders experience that. If you've had many businesses, that really resonates when you sort of go off track and you're not really doing the thing that you originally started and loved. What are the signs? Like, what do you see? How are they presenting to you?
Well, I mentioned this before, but, the work that once really energized you no longer does. Okay. That's a big burnout sign, because it doesn't mean that you don't love that anymore. It just means you need to reconnect with that. You might also feel, and a lot of high achievers and a lot of founders that I work with who are high performers, they don't spend enough time valuing and celebrating successes. But also the burnout sign for here is that you're actually numb to those successes. So you're not recognizing and you're not realizing you're making progress. Fear-based decisions is another big one. And when you know that you're making that instead of the zoom out, making strategic decisions. So always really be careful of that. You feel exhausted, but you keep pushing through is another sign of burnout. And the other one, and I think this could even be at the very top, and I think it's critically important, you start withdrawing from connecting with people both inside and outside of your business. And so you feel increasingly lonely. And loneliness is part of being a founder as well. But actually not connecting with people outside of that is a surefire way that you're starting to move down a path which is not good for you.
We just had a conversation with Ian Wong, who's one of our expert teachers for the 48-hour accelerator. And he was talking about what he loved about and why he wanted to get involved was because he felt like it was like a business well-being weekend, like a reset, where founders who, have been in their business for 18 months, are not getting the growth they expected, they could come to this retreat effectively and, go through the playbook again and find some new nuggets and just revitalize themselves. So it's, don't kind of go inside yourself, actually reach out and find something that's going to bring this all back to life for you.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it, Pip? It's another counterintuitive truth that, when you're feeling that, you've actually got to do the opposite, and that is to reach out and get involved back with the community. Yeah. And that connection piece is really important. And when I work with high-performing teams and we move out of the environment of work for a day, and this can relate to a person for a founder or their founding team, move away from the office and into a space that's different to what you're used to, it's an opportunity to recharge and think differently. But I talk about it as slowing down to speed up. Sometimes we've got to move the frenetic pace of it and just slow down and think of some of the things that you're talking about as part of your accelerator. And then that allows us to speed up afterwards. And so that's the concept around that. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with that comment.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dave. I've hit the nail on the head. That makes me feel good. All right. Well, let's just do the last few things on what's the practical advice for people? What really What do you think founders can do to really strengthen their mindset and become a thriving founder? And then we'll summarize our key points.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, revisit your purpose, audit your time. So, high value work needs to align with your strengths and your purpose and your values, not just about putting out the fires. Set micro recovery so that, we're talking about burnout, setting boundaries around your time, but protect your energy like you protect the capital in your business. I think it's really important. We look after the financial side of it first, and we're not looking after the driving force, the engine room that enables that success. Connect with your friends and family, really important part of being a founder, where you often feel isolated and lonely. But, a burnt out founder is a liability to your business. It's just reminding yourself of that, to not go in that direction. Other things that you can try to stay focused are around understanding your priorities. And I have a client who likes to use the word vicious prioritization. And so what that is about is the 80-20 rule that we've heard about, Pareto's law. That's about focusing the 20% of your impact driving actions with 80% of your energy, right? And really understanding what they are. Otherwise, we're just moving in whatever direction pulls us. The other thing is protect your thinking space. Spend time out on the side and thinking and strategizing and working on your business. Delegation, if you have the opportunity to be a founder who can delegate, then think about the things that you do best, where you add the best value in the business. So what's the highest value thing that you can do as a founder? And where are the things that aren't business critical, potentially that won't break, that you could have somebody else in your team do? And think about this business critical versus non-critical element when you think about prioritization. I like really simple rules. Just set up some really simple rules in your business that don't require you to have a whole process and procedure behind them. So I like that approach too.
There are two things I do when I'm feeling like mentally exhausted. I love outsourcing for stuff that I'm not good at. So I will go on to one of the outsourcing Upwork or one of the other sites and find people that are good at those things that I'm not good at. And I think that's really important. Even though it does feel like an expense that maybe you can cover, it actually frees you up to feel not as stressed. And the other thing I do is I start moving into creative mode. So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and he said, he was talking about how, if we constantly keep doing your business when you're feeling stressed, that, as you say, all these things come up. But if you can take yourself out of your business and just do some kind of creative pursuit. So some people run. I mean, I've written, as I was telling you earlier, I've written this children, a sort of a pre-teenager, a tween business playbook for for the 10-year-old young entrepreneur. But I just did that because I needed some sort of creative outlet. Might turn into something, but I think kind of engaging in that creativity is really important.
Yeah, that's great. That is very true as well. I like physical exercise, running, but I also like hiking, multi-day hikes with my mates. That's something that I really like doing also.
Yeah.
So, that gets me out into nature, and I really like that. And also connecting with my best friends. That's really cool for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dave. That was really enlightening. I'll post this to the people that came, and I think we've got this live on LinkedIn as well, so I'll send out to those onto LinkedIn and just do a summary. If anyone's got any last questions for Dave, you can pop it in chat. But it was really useful. I think it is something that we don't think about when we build our businesses is, the mindset of the founder is key to the success, and not enough investors or not enough stakeholders appreciate the pathway to that, I think. And particularly the idea that you have to train your brain for this experience. I think that's really useful information. And be true to your purpose of why you started the business. When I do brand strategies, we always go back to the essence of a brand and why that started. And so that's always linked to the entrepreneur's purpose. And the third thing is that idea about values is, not just why you're doing it is your purpose, but how you want that essence to live and breathe.
Thanks, Pip. And for me, what I've picked up in this conversation is this intentionality piece, which is so important. So there's awareness, and the awareness is about you or your business or things you need to change. There's then the intention And that's that deliberate action to focus on the things that are going to shift the needle for you personally and for your business as well, being really clear on that. And then it's taking action aligned with your values and your purpose. And for me, they're the really important things. We're in such a distracted world. There's so much opportunity for information out there for us. AI is providing allowing us to enable us a super brain to exist, which is really positive, but we need to really be more focused on being aware and being intentional in our actions. And I think that's going to be the success of businesses and leadership going into the future.
Yeah, great. I've just put the link into the accelerator as well, so into the chat, so people can grab that now. Okay, thanks everyone, and thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much, Pip. I've loved having this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. See ya.
See you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.